the reason we set this up to have this conversation is we do have a lot of our membership are women who are just career changing and coming into IT, and they were challenged with trying to get past that first interview when they didn't have experience. So I would ask our group of recruiters, what do you recommend and how do you recommend for people that are new to this industry to kind of break in and be able to get past the screening processes?
Yeah, that's a great question. Carmen Wiedenhoffer here. One thing I look for early career folks is some sort of repo. Now, while I personally cannot read said projects in the repo, I will leverage someone in my company to take a look. And so I always feel like the best way to demonstrate your abilities is have projects in a repo, whether it was through a boot camp or something else. Even more powerful would be your own project that you've been working on. And I definitely have those evaluated by someone that works at my company to say, hey, how's this look? How's this person kind of progressing? Would they be able to handle the workload here?
Yeah, and a repo would be like a GitHub account or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah, this is a good question. What happens when all your projects in GitHub are private due to NDAs and other
Yep.
privacy concerns?
So I would say if and that does happen, right? Depending on where folks have worked previously. Unfortunately, especially in someone's early career, you would want to probably have personal projects in there.
Yeah. Another thing, this is Lisa Rokusek. It can be tough if you don't have code, or if you are, if you're limited because of an NDA. You can try to offset that. I often don't necessarily look for that, because that can be a sort of an extra barrier for folks that maybe don't code outside of work. So if you're transitioning from a different career and you are trying to get a technical job, perhaps maybe even a job where you wouldn't have a code repository, I think it matters to leverage the experience you have, and it can matter the kind of role that you look for. A lot of people, I was working with a candidate yesterday who was transitioning careers, and this wasn't necessarily a hardcore coding job, but they were, when they were searching for jobs, they were holding themselves back by not thinking about job titles that might leverage their past experience. So when we started doing analyst and some SQL, like 100 jobs popped up that they hadn't been seeing. So it's kind of, you have to target and then match language and leverage your experience. And it's great if you have code that you can share, but a lot of companies are starting to not look for that, because they're aware that that can be a difficult challenge, say, for people that don't sit at home and code all the time.
Yeah, so this is Michelle with Enterprise Holdings. We have I would say, kind of a different approach for entry-level talent. If you have a GitHub or a space similar to that where your code is based, it's exciting for us to have the opportunity to take a look through it, but our recruiters are really not technical in terms of going in there and being able to read code. So it's just nice to have something on your resume. But to us, it doesn't, we would never go in there, and I think we're a very large organization. And so for us, we wouldn't actually tap on one of our technical resources and say, hey, can you give us any insights into, their code repository? But it is nice to have on a resume. For us, we would really, for entry-level talent, we say we hire for attitude and aptitude. That's, that's really what we're looking for. People that are hungry and excited to start your career in this space. And if you are sort of a second careerist, where maybe you went through a boot camp program and you did something previously, a lot of times there's a lot of drive there from you. You're very committed, self-driven, you're excited about this work. And that's really what we like to hear in the interview process. You can't train that, and you can't bring that out of somebody. They have to come to the table with that desire to learn and to be hungry and to learn about new technologies and always be curious, always wanting to stay up to date on new technologies. So that's really, we spend a lot of our interviews kind of probing to understand what are your motivators. So that's probably the biggest piece for us. We also, of course, need to have we need to know if you have sort of a baseline understanding of the basics. And a lot of our entry-level interviews consist of asking questions about object-oriented programming principles, just understanding what is your experience so far with various databases. Do you have any experience working with front-end technologies? And if yes, can you talk to us about that? And typically through those questions, we like to have candidates who have worked on sort of a passion project. It could be something as simple as creating a website or an app. And honestly, when we go out to universities and when we speak with like various bootcamp graduates like Launch Code, a lot of times they already have something that they've worked on before. And so we don't necessarily need to dig in and see your code base, but if you can explain, oh yes, I use this technology for the front end and it was tied to this database and Java, and you can kind of talk through the different technologies that you use. That's really what we want to hear from your perspective, how you put it all together. And so we won't necessarily go through your GitHub and take a look and dig into your code. But if you can speak to your experience, any technologies that you've used, where you've used them, various projects that you've had, even if it's just a dummy project, or if it's, I worked for a friend and I helped build this website using these technologies, that's kind of what we're looking for entry-level talent.
And Michelle,
I'll maybe ask a
that's great
continued
info.
question, if you don't mind, Rebecca. So Michelle,
Yeah.
and maybe point this to Barb as well, Barb Steen, for the larger companies, how can that attitude and aptitude be reflected in a resume? Like, how are you looking for that in a resume that someone's coming in?
Yeah, and so I will say, I think there's two different avenues where we typically get entry-level talent. We get people coming in through your traditional university career track, and then we also get second careerists. And I would say we probably partner the most with Launch Code. With Enterprise, we've had a lot of success in hiring launch coders, so they kind of fall into two different buckets, and I think we look for two different things in those types of candidates. So if you're coming from more of that traditional, you're going through a 4-year university, you're getting a technical degree, a lot of times we'll look to see, are you involved on campus? Are you involved in other student organizations that are IT related? And again, I think putting your project experience on your resume highlights, I do this for fun, I enjoy doing this. We had just one thing that comes to mind. We had an intern last summer who impressed us at the career fair when we met him, and he's really passionate about playing the guitar. And so he built an app that he was about to put out to the App Store, that kind of helped with creating music. And so it kind of merged his two hobbies of coding and then also music. And just hearing him talk about how he created it and how he did this really on his own time, and how seeing his excitement around it was nice. And we were able to talk through that because we were live at a career fair. But in terms of what did he put on his resume, just in case he wasn't standing in front of me, if I could read about what he did on a resume, that's what we like to see. We get a lot of applicants, and of course you have to weed through the resumes. We actually just posted our internship opportunities for this upcoming summer, and we've already been flooded with applicants. So I know it's hard to kind of get through some of those initial screenings, but if a resume gets in front of me and I was somebody looking for a first full-time role, I would highlight my project experience at the very top of my resume, and any other work experience put down at the bottom, because if it's not necessarily related, it's not going to catch my eye. So for those that are a little bit more traditional career, you know, going through that 4-year university, that's what we would typically look for. And I know it's not easy to kind of get a sense of that when you're just looking at a sheet of paper, but if you can kind of highlight the different projects that you've done, and if you can do that on a resume, that's what we are looking for. So detailing all and any project work that you have is important. Now, I guess shifting gears, if I was looking at a second careerist, maybe somebody who went through a boot camp program, I'm going to be honest, we have a fantastic contact that we partner with at Launch Code, and she kind of helps us in terms of feeding us candidates that she feels like will be a good fit for enterprise. And then we will do our interviews just based on who's recommended to us through her. So it's not to say that there's no way of seeing that on a resume from a second careerist person, but that is typically how we get our talent in from a Launch Code. But if I'm looking at a different boot camp, we've recently partnered with a couple others, and I would probably say similar, just really highlighting your project experience at the top of your resume. And maybe writing a couple pieces about yourself, about why you're looking to transition careers. We recently had a high school teacher from a local high school. She had done math. She was a high school math teacher for the last 20 years. Decided it was time for a career transition. She went through the Launch Code program, and then she did our internship program this past summer, and now she's a full-time employee with us. And she, on her resume, wrote a couple very brief sentences on why she was looking to make that career transition and how she felt like her past experience would lend well to other companies. And there's something to be said for second careerists. And from our perspective, there's a lot of things that we don't have to get you up to speed on, because you already have spent your career doing other things and working in the professional world. So there are definitely pluses to leaning into second careerist type talent for the organization. There's a lot of things we don't have to train you on that we would have to train typically somebody coming out of college. So that's just one thing I wanted to share too, is from an organization perspective, we really enjoy getting that type of talent. So if there isn't anybody on this call that has gone through a boot camp program, I do think that a lot of employers really like to see a lot of those second careerists, because you guys have a lot of characteristics that, you know, you're usually very well motivated, excited about all of this, and the transition into a corporate environment is pretty easy for you.
So, and I think that answers a couple other questions that were on here about how to mention, or if to mention, your career transition person. And that goes, I guess, for the resume and the interview. So it sounds like it's okay to mention it in both. I have heard on resumes, some people like that little story thing at the beginning, and some people are like, oh, just get to the meat of the resume. So if I guess maybe I'm trying to ask, what tips for the resume would be to get that first job? How do you tell your story? How do you quantify things? What soft skills?
Yeah, and every recruiter is going to be a little bit different. And that's where it's, you know, there's a human element to it, and not everybody's going to operate the same. For me personally, just like you said, your resume is really your opportunity to kind of tell your story. And it doesn't have to be lengthy. It could honestly just be one sentence at the very top. But I think if you leave the recruiter with a question, like, why did you make a career transition? That allows them the opportunity to kind of fill in that gap where it might not really be your true story. So if you just put a quick one sentence blurb of why you're looking to make the career transition, for me as a recruiter, I don't have to sit and question, well, you were a math teacher for 20 years. Why are you looking to make a career transition? So it just, I think it clarifies a lot. But like I said, every recruiter is a little bit different. For me, you know, your resume is your opportunity to tell your story. And I think you don't necessarily want to leave a recruiter with a lot of questions.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You think about how we make decisions, all of us moving through the world, it's always with a narrative. And it is important to both think about how you're going to be perceived, the information. Your resume isn't you. I think a lot of people are like, this is me, I wrote a resume, and it represents everything. Really, a resume is a thought argument to get a conversation with the person that you're targeting. And so you're not necessarily just sending a resume into the void. You should be matching a job description as much as possible. Or if you don't have a particular job, you should match the company culture, and you can look at the jobs that they have and try to build a bridge between what you're trying to accomplish, what, the job that you're looking for, the company you're looking for, and imagine how you're being perceived. And the better job you do at matching language, like literally matching language, verbs, nouns, tools, development environment, the better you're going to land and the traction that you'll get.
Yep, I'd love to piggyback on all of that. I agree with everything both of you just said. Buzzwords are big. A lot of recruiters or sourcers may not really understand the role in which they're recruiting for. So they are literally taking word for word and trying to look for those parallels. So matching that verbiage is big. And then also if it were to go into a VMS, they are searching by those keywords and they will not see it unless it's in those top 20% profiles. So really keep that in mind and alter the resume each and every time that you have a job description, and really stick with that. Another thing is, recruiters also don't read, we skim, and we tend to look for like those buzzwords or those quick hits. So be relevant. It doesn't need to be a 4-page resume. It doesn't need to be a 1-page resume. Just keep it relevant. And I also think a summary is big. A quick snapshot of who you are, talking about your passions and what it is you're doing and what you want to do. And if I know not everyone here is in St. Louis, but I see a lot of resumes where it just says nationwide. And for Slalom, I recruit for St. Louis. So I'm looking for St. Louis specific people. So, put that on your resume, maybe where you're located, not your home address, but your city and your state. And that way it can we know exactly what you're looking for. And then you can put if you're open to remote work or not.
That's good. We also have a question about we have a couple questions about trying to get into the tech world, but maybe not a very tech specific job like a IT project manager, where maybe they have some tech background but they're wanting to get away from coding. Is that okay to mention? Or if there was another question about someone that just wanted to get into the tech industry, but not necessarily a tech position. So I was wondering if there were any tips for that. And I don't know if we've heard from Tiffany or Emily, if they're on the call, if they want to pop in and share some wisdom. Or we
Good
can.
morning, everyone. I was actually going through and answering some questions,
Good.
typing some questions in case we couldn't get to people. But there was a question someone popped in here that said, do any of you hire for non-technical roles in the tech industry? If so, what advice do you have for entry-level applicants that don't have any corporate experience? So non-technical can be very broad. I've hired for, and it could be considered, there is some technical aspects to it, but all the way from marketing roles, from different companies call them different things, but like a project management sort of roles, which there are technical components to that. So if you're kind of thinking about it in those aspects, you're going to want to highlight jobs where you had the opportunity to work on projects or programs that you can sort of highlight that project management experience, or there's some free resources. I know we were talking about if you don't have that experience, there are some free resources where you can pull like data sets and sort of, I just dropped it in the chat, can, start to build out your portfolio, so that you can become familiar and build a repository, even if it's just, with some data visualization. Kaggle is a really great resource for free data sets, to help you with that. So there are some different ways that you can kind of start to go and highlight some of your more non-technical experience if you're trying to break into the like a tech org, and showcase what you've worked on.
So one thing that Lisa had mentioned earlier is that like on your resume, that's your first impression and you're trying to create a narrative, right? And if you are coming from a different industry, you're making that transition, those bullet points become extremely important. So, like, can you tell a narrative in that piece? So, let's say you are coming from a non technical place, you're looking to be aligned with tech in a project manager space. What's important for a project manager? Communication, dealing with conflict, being able to align stakeholders, these types of skills. And that's what you want to leverage from your previous experience. So, like, don't shy away from having things like you don't just need to say, like, here are my 4 bullet points. Sometimes when people are transitioning, I love seeing that connective tissue. So they might have like previous accomplishments from a job, and then similar to what Lisa said, align it with what is going to be important in the next job. So again, like if you are targeting a technical project manager role, it is critically important to have good communication skills, to work across teams or divisions, and any experience that you've had doing those activities is going to shine through. So, that would be an area to think about, is leveraging your previous experience. A lot of times, previous experience for folks, Michelle mentioned, I personally love seeing people who transitioned in their career because we don't have to teach them newer things, and a lot of it is around relationship building and, like you said, time management. But I would lean into the relationship building stuff, because no matter what role you're looking for, those are critical people skills that all organizations are looking for.
Those are
I
great
would tag
answers.
on to that too. Just yeah, as someone who hires, I do hire for project management and business analysis roles, and I'm glad you brought up relationships, because that is a big part of what I look for, is people who can create relationships, build relationships, and make them strong even through difficulty. Not every project goes perfectly, but can you build that relationship with a client, particularly in consulting? But this is important in enterprise as well. So I'll jump off.
Yeah. So if someone is transitioning careers, those are really the type of questions you get in an interview. So the question is, how can you kind of like precede that onto a resume? So what I would do is, for each previous company I had worked for, I would have a list of 1 to 2 bullet points of accomplishments. And in those bullet points, you can say like, led a successful project across multiple teams or across the division. It led to this much revenue. It led to those are the things, as a recruiter, I'm going to go, those are kind of like the skills I'm looking for. So I think that is a good way to kind of bridge that gap that Lisa had mentioned.
That's great.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind everyone, this is being recorded. If you have to hop off, that's fine. We'll get the recording up for you. And I think we'll probably have to finish up in the next 15 minutes or so. I wanted to point out that a lot of your questions, we have someone that was a stay-at-home mom for 17 years and wants to know how to, but they were in IT before that. So I guess they're asking about the time span there. And I feel like a lot of the points you've made about experience, they can draw from experience as a caregiver, but maybe like, how do you answer questions in an interview to share those experiences? Is it okay to be like, here's how I solve this conflict between my 2-year-old and 5-year-old?
I think so. This is something I'll probably never forget. Early on in my career, I received a resume from somebody who was a stay-at-home mom for several years, and she was applying for project manager roles, and she had a very creative resume that really just highlighted everything that she did at the home with her kids and managing the home and all the finances and all of that while her husband was working. And all of it translated into project management. So she got really creative. She took a look at a project management job description, and exactly what Carmen was saying, she took, these soft skills that I was good at the home that translated very well over to project management. She was basically a project manager of her home and of the people inside the home. And I think she just really embraced the fact that it was going to be challenging for her to make a transition back into the working world, but she did it in a very creative way and just went in fully. And, her title was stay-at-home mom, and she went through and talked about all the different, all the different responsibilities she had in the home and how it translated well to project management world. So that was something that I thought was interesting, unique. It caught my interest, and I still remember it probably 8 years later. So get creative with your resume. At the very least, if you pique someone's interest, a lot of times they may give you a quick call and just want to hear from you. But going back into your specific question, so if you were a stay-at-home mom for 17 years and you were previously in the IT industry, I will say, a lot has changed in 17 years. Technology moves so quickly. So it's not to say that I wouldn't mention it, but what I would probably want to know more as a recruiter, what have you done in the last couple of years to get you more familiar with current technologies? So I've spoken to a lot of stay-at-home moms who may have been out of the workforce for a couple of years to stay at home with their kids. Now they're looking to get back in it. In the last year, they spent really heavily invested in doing a boot camp program, or there are so many different resources online now where you can take these different courses through Coursera, and there's just so many places where you can get online certifications, complete courses, things like that, that just get you immersed back into today's technologies. And so as a recruiter, that's what I would be looking for. What have you been doing the last year or so to try to bridge that knowledge gap of what you were doing back, 17 years ago to today? And again, I think it's okay to say that you were a stay-at-home mom for X amount of time, or for X amount of years, and maybe highlight some of the soft skills that you probably have your expert level now, and how, what skills would translate well to the workplace. I think it's okay to highlight that on your resume, but then to also talk through and highlight the different online courses or certifications or boot camps that you may have completed within the recent months or years to kind of help make that transition a little bit easier.
We also have another question about, would you say the tech industry is inclusive to neurodivergent individuals? And I saw that someone had posted a particular website to look for. Oh, it was a reply. But I was to check out Mentra because it's a job board for people with neurodivergencies. But if you had any, Barb, I'm gonna call on you. Do you have any, or if anyone else has good experience or advice for someone with?
And I'm not sure I understand the question completely.
So like if someone has, I guess they're asking. Okay, they said, would you say the tech industry is inclusive to neurodivergent individuals like ADHD, autism?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the extremely short answer there.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
that answers it.
Yeah.
And I would even say, I mean, I wonder if there's things that they've done in their life to, they've constantly been fitting into a world that's not made for them exactly. So they probably have a lot of skills they could draw from and highlight.
What I would say too for that is from a corporate perspective, again, I work for a larger organization. Smaller companies may have a different take on it, but for larger organizations, a lot of times there's a large focus on diversity, and that spans a lot of different categories, and this would absolutely fall within one. And so for us, if you are coming into an environment where maybe you have ADHD or ADD or anything kind of that falls in that category, I would encourage you to bring that up to your HR generalist. And a lot of times companies can ask, what can we do to provide a reasonable accommodation to make your functionality at work a little bit easier? Are there things that we can do as an organization to create a reasonable accommodation for if you have ADHD or something similar? And a lot of times it could just be a very minimal fix that we have no problem accommodating to. And a lot of it is also just about communication and making sure that your manager is aware. And it doesn't necessarily mean that other team members have to be aware, but if your manager is aware of things like that you're dealing with personally, they might be able to help with coaching and mentoring and making sure that you're different circumstances like that aren't preventing you from getting to where your career goals are.
I might jump in on that as well, that I think one of the comments was that neurodivergency can be overrepresented in tech compared to other industries. And I wouldn't say I don't think it's overrepresented. I think it's definitely represented. And depending on where you are, and I have worked with neurodivergent people both in enterprise and in consulting. And I know in the role that I have and in the company that I'm currently with, we value that very much because there's so much that can come from a different mindset that there's, sometimes with those on the autism spectrum, they have a particular interest and focus that gives them incredible talent in certain areas. My husband is neurodivergent. He can do math and calculus in his head, and he contributes significantly in statistical analysis for his company. And I see that in the company that I work for as well, that we value, and then we coach if there's areas that folks need strengthening. I would do that with anyone who's divergent or neurodivergent, or anyone who is anywhere on the spectrum. That it's finding the right spot and the right people to help grow your career and asking for that and being open to feedback. So I'll jump off then.
Yeah, absolutely. We had an intern this past summer that fell somewhere on the spectrum, and she was incredible. We ended up extending her a full-time offer, and super excited for her to join our organization whenever she graduates. But she just looked, to your point, Trish, she just looked at things different, and she was an absolute asset to our organization, and her team loved her. I think it took a minute for people to really understand her. But there were so many things that she really brought into the organization that was just unique. So there are a lot of ways that they can contribute, in other ways where others might not be able to.
There's a lot of easy accommodations. I know I had someone on my team who had ADHD, and he was sitting in a spot where people were constantly walking by his desk. And so we were able to make an accommodation for that, of just moving him so that he wasn't having a line of traffic distracting him every time. And because of course everybody wanted to talk to him too, because he's nice. But so there's things that we can do to work within different, as managers, to support, all of our employees.
It looks like a lot of people are hopping off, but I wanted to pose the question about cover letters. Yes, no, what do you want to see in them if you do get them?
Cover letters get a bad rap. A lot of people say, I don't even read them, which is horrifying to me. But I know if you're really busy, a separate piece of paper may be a barrier. Don't even think about whether it's a cover letter, which could sort of drive a generic, here's who I am, robotic. Think of that as real estate to, again, build that bridge between where you are and the role that you're looking for. And it doesn't matter if it's an email, if it's a formal cover letter, or if it's a block of text you paste in a text box, or if it's a portion of your professional summary. You should still be matching the requirements of the job, matching what the job is trying to accomplish. A job has its own narrative if you think about it, and it's often in between the lines of the job description. So you want to capture that narrative and talk about how you can do it. And it's another way for you to share who you are and what you can do with folks and draw on your experience and skills. That's my short answer.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm not against them. I'm not for them either. They're
just
a good story.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that kind of goes back to, if a recruiter has a lot of resumes to run through, I would prefer to just have a quick 1 minute or like a 1 sentence blurb about yourself at the top of your resume. The formalities of, taking up half of a page talking through your story, I just think a lot of people don't read them. So again, I'm not for or against them. If I receive one that has a cover letter on it, I'll probably breeze through it really quick to just kind of learn a little bit more about you. But I think that same thing can be accomplished with just maybe a one-liner at the top of your resume.
That's good advice. Is there any advice for people who aren't native English speakers? They're worried that they get nervous and that, I guess, it snowballs.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that, because English is also not my first language. I think as much as you kind of practice, it helps, like, you not get nervous or mispronunciation some words, and I think that would be my biggest advice. But also take that as an advantage for you. Because if English is not your first language, that means that you speak more than one. And and I feel like here in the US, most of the teams are very diverse in terms of culture and in terms of people. So bring that as a selling point for you, that you come from another culture, you have a lot to add to the team. You have, sometimes previous experience from another country, and that can that can be cross-functional, but also can add to the team. And be honest, and we all have been interviewing before, and say, like, I'm sorry, this is not my first language if I make any mistakes. And I would say, like, the hiring managers, they are very you're very much focused on what you can bring to the team, either your soft skills, either your technical skills. And I see, like, the language as adding something beneficial rather than eliminating you for the hiring process. So I would say just practicing, and it's an exercise. Each interview, you will get better, you'll feel more comfortable, and you will add some things, so yeah, I think it's a good thing, and we can use that in our favor.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
one thing I'll share too, I think a lot of IT workforces are very diverse, and I think you have a lot of really great things to share, especially if, from having that perspective. But also, one thing I would encourage you to do is just try to not get nervous, because there are so many managers that speak with people that have English not as your first language. So they're used to navigating that. So I know it can be challenging, especially in an interview when you're trying to present yourself as best as you can. But just remember, I think that many IT managers are used to speaking with people that have English as a second or third language.
Yeah,
I would imagine you're
also-
also used to working with people and talking to people who are nervous.
Exactly. I was gonna say I go into interviews nervous and I don't have I'm speaking the language of the interviewer. So you're ahead of most of the people going into that interview, knowing another language. Oh, I want to point out that in the chat, people mentioned that on LinkedIn, the number of people that have applied could just be representing the number of people clicking on that job description. So I know that's been discouraging for a lot of people when they look at jobs on LinkedIn.
Could I jump in here really quick and give some advice on applying?
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Use your network. Use your network. Look at LinkedIn, see who you might know that may work there today, may have worked there in the future. Have a conversation with them. Understand, the climate of the organization and the role before you apply, and maybe even, ask for a referral. Who else should I be talking to, or anything like that. That goes such a long way. If somebody is going to, if any one of my employees at Slalom refer someone to me, I have a conversation, whether they're going to work here or not. They spent time getting to know someone, having a conversation to reach out to me and say, hey, Barb, you should talk to this person. I'm going to do it. So it really goes a long way. And I think that should be your very first task before even hitting that apply button.
And also, I think, when you're applying on LinkedIn, sometimes you can even message the person that who posted the job, like, hey, I see that you have this open role. Here's my interest and why I'm interested in this company. I think creating that connection, that network that Barb was saying, I think it helps you be more than just one resume and the ATS system. You're a person. Here's your motivations. Here's your why. So I think that's very helpful. And to be honest, a lot of times those applicants on LinkedIn, you see like 200 applicants. They're just applying, and So I think don't get discouraged by the numbers, because the numbers a lot of times they don't match the skills of the role, or they're just applying for like 1,000 jobs and not even looking what job is. Sometimes it's a local to St. Louis and the person is in another location. So, so don't, I would not think too much about the numbers, and more like how you as an individual can make an impact on that recruiter, or, how can you show your skills to that person.
One last thing, and I know we have to go soon, but for folks that are researching markets, I know it's, you can go to Indeed, you can go to LinkedIn, you can apply for jobs, but there's a lot more that you can do to sort of map what's available, what companies are out there using what skills. If you use LinkedIn and search for people with particular skills that you have that you're trying to leverage for a job, it's going to help you get a sense of companies that exist that you didn't know about. And sometimes then you can do some personal networking with those people in those companies to get a leg up on roles, or to just ask for advice for a job search. People will help you. So remember, you can use LinkedIn search tools, but you can also do a site search and search LinkedIn and get better data through Google. So consider doing that kind of research and not just staying within the big platforms, because it can really inform your search.
Oh, that's great advice.
We could probably do a whole coffee talk on LinkedIn.
Oh my!
I was just thinking that, actually. So
Oh my goodness.
you see my notepad? I just wrote that down.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
That sounds great. So Rebecca, do you want to go wrap up? I did just update our slide. Thank you, Patricia, for pointing out that our next meeting is actually next Wednesday, 9/20. So that'll be the panel discussion on careers in IT with QA. And then Rebecca, I'll jump off if you want to wrap up.
Okay, yeah, just a reminder that this will be recorded so that we can, so you can get more information, and we'll get some contact information for the recruiters, and they can give us a little blurb of who they recruit for, so you can get connected with the right people. Let's see. There's also information about joining Women Who Code, finding us on Meetup, finding our Slack channel, and we're also on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at WW or WW Code STL. Let me see.
Maybe we could drop that in the chat.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you find us, finding us on LinkedIn, that'd be great. I do want to jump into really quick and say thank you. Us today. So give us a little grace for being a little bit bumpy, but Rebecca did an amazing job of coordinating all the questions. So I wanted to thank Rebecca for leading the meeting as well. So our group has grown significantly in the last year, and we want to continue to do that to support the women in our community. So we're really, really thankful that you are all here today. So thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you.
And did you have anything else to wrap up on? Oh, here we've got all our information here in the slide deck. I apologize.
Oh yeah, that's what I was looking for to pull up. That's great.
Yeah, we had a little technical difficulty with the slide deck today.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically we wrap up by 9:15, but sometimes we run a little bit long if conversation's going well. And this coffee talk is really a great time for us to hear what topics and pull things out of what will be great topics to talk about in other meetings as well. So
this is just one thing I wanted to plug in here.
Yeah.
So for us, for enterprise IT specifically, we do a lot of our entry-level hires coming in through our internship program over the summer. And so I saw there were a couple people in the comment section who were going through Launch Code's program now. Your graduation date, depending upon how long it takes for you to get through their program, could lend well to doing an internship with us over the summer. So we'll typically reserve a couple of openings in like March, April of 2024, to leave them open for those who are completing boot camp. So like a Launch Code or similar type program. So I would say if you are open to doing an internship, absolutely keep your eyes open for companies that offer those types of opportunities, because a lot of companies do kind of pipeline entry-level talent through their internship program. So if you're open to that, I would encourage it. We had two launch coders and I think 2 from Tech Elevator that went through our internship program this past summer, and all are on board with us full-time as full-time software engineers now. So keep your eyes open for those types of opportunities, and just be open and willing to do something that might put you outside of your comfort zone, because it could lead to really good opportunities like that.
Well, and that's good to know that you can use a boot camp as an internship, because a lot of them require a graduation date. And I know I assumed they were looking for traditional degree.
Yeah, we do not. There are some companies that do, but there are quite a few that don't. So definitely just keep your eyes open and use your network.
Okay, well, I think that's it for today. Thank you again for everyone. And I hope we got to everyone's questions. And if not, we'll try to get them in another coffee talk or panel. So thank you again.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks everyone.
Oh, yes. Thank you to
everybody.
all of our speakers. You were wonderful. Thank you
Thanks for having us.
jumping in and helping out.
Pleasure
and
to be
answering
here.
on
Take
chat.
care.
So
Yeah, thank
Ashika,
you guys.
Bye, guys.
just if Ashika's still on, and if those that are still on want to volunteer, you could go to www.womenwhocode.com. There is a volunteer link that will link you to your local groups.
Oh yeah, that's great, because we had out-of-towners too.
Yep, lots of people all over the world were on today, so very exciting stuff. Thank you everybody for participating.
Yes, thank you.
Rebecca, great job.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Take care. Thank you again.